Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. Quite excited to be here today and talk to you all about Bangalore sporting history. Now, before I begin, I'd just like to know how many of you are Bangaloreans. I'm meaning to say, have been born, raised here, or have lived here for a long time. Oh, that's a fairly good number. Okay, majority. Um, and how many of you are interested in sports, or were you all sports persons during your younger days, school, college, and did you all take part in sports? Do you all still follow sports? Okay, that's interesting. So I have some people, at least, who are followers of sports, because our topic today is about the sporting history of Bangalore. My sound is okay, right? Okay, fine. Okay. Um, so, whether one plays any game, whether one is into sports or not, I think the field of sports is a very fascinating one because it's just become so much part of our life that we are also entwined into it. And with television, I think sports has gained a lot of popularity. Everybody is in some form or the other involved or interested in sports. So that's the reason sports has become so popular. I mean, not just because it's popularized by the media, but also because of the fans, the money that's involved in sports. There's big money in sports today. So there's a lot of interest in sports. And I think it's important for all of us to, and necessary to know about the happenings in sports. So anyway, let me move on to the topic of today, which is about Bangalore's sporting history. Its stellar achievements, the extraordinary achievements of sports persons. And Bangalore, I mean, it has a very rich history in sports. Not many people know about it, but and I think I see quite a few of you are probably millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, or whatever. But it's important that you all know about our city's past, about our city's sports persons, about their achievements, and also the rich history, what Bangalore once was on the Indian and global sporting map. Um, so it is, I think, a matter of great pride to say that Bangalore, being a tier 2 city, unlike Delhi, Calcutta, Madras, or Bombay, spawned so many national and international champions from Bangalore, which is really incredible because it wasn't, so developed as the other four metros. But yet, Bangalore had some of the top sports persons who won international acclaim. And I'll focus on those sports persons a little later towards the end of my talk, and even probably show some visuals of these extraordinary sports persons. But now let me just take you back to the time when it all began, and that was in the 1800s. So it was in the 1800s, as most of you know, that the British came to Bangalore and they shifted their cantonment from Srirangapatna to Bangalore. And they started sort of developing the city, building infrastructure, building sports facilities, recreation facilities, all of that. And it was more to cater to the British. But indirectly, it also helped the local populace. And, the local people got involved with the British in all these matters. So that's how it sort of began when, they started building these sports facilities. And interestingly, around the same time, sort of in the mid 1800s, the Christian missionaries came to Bangalore. And they sort of, started these schools in Bangalore. If you go back to 1842, one of the first missionary schools in Bangalore was Mitralaya Girls High School, which is in the city area near Kantirava Stadium side, near the United Mission School or behind the Unity buildings, if you all have passed by. Now, that was one of the oldest schools. And then soon after, there was, which is the school called St. John's High School in Cleveland Town. There was Goodwill Girls High School, all started by the Christian missionaries. And there was also Sacred Heart Girls High School in this part of town, St. Joseph's Boys. There was Bishop Cotton Boys. And quite a few other schools followed. And then in the city area, what was then Bangalore clearly divided in the cantonment and the city area. In the city side, you had Mahila Seva Samaj, which was also a very good school, and St. Teresa's Convent in Chamrajpet. These came up in the early 1900s. And most of these schools just threw up these acclaimed sportspersons of Bangalore over the years. And why? Because these schools basically laid the foundation for sports to develop and flourish. They had fairly good sports facilities like play areas, grounds. There were a lot of competitions that were taking place. So they sort of even encouraged a lot of children to compulsorily take part in sports. They employed full-time PT teachers. There was a full-time PT class, as most of us have also been through all of that. But all this sort of, helped to seed a sports culture in Bangalore. And I think that went a long way from those days, early days of the late 1800s and early 1900s. And as slowly and steadily, while Bangalore sort of evolved, developed, grew into a slightly bigger city, um, the sports culture also sort of evolved. And a lot of people, a lot of schools started coming up in different areas of Bangalore towards India's independence time, 1947, and even soon after that. And most of these schools sort of laid emphasis on sports. There were regular inter-school competitions, and they were fiercely contested. It was very competitive because I've spoken to a lot of old-timers who sort of grew up and went to school in the pre-independence days as well as immediately after independence. And they were saying, and many of them became teachers in schools later, teaching in the 60s and 70s. And they were telling me that, we really don't see the kind of competition that we had those days. It was so intense, and which is why, I think that was one of the reasons how sports became such a popular pastime in Bangalore. Um, so that's basically a little bit of background about how sports sort of took its roots in Bangalore, thanks to the British partly, thanks to the Christian missionaries, and also to the general policies of the time, post-independence and all of that. But when one talks about the sporting history of Bangalore, I think one needs to highlight three interesting disciplines, sporting disciplines, which were a significant part of Bangalore way back in the 1800s. Three sporting disciplines. Can anyone take a guess which could be these three? Um, Not quite, but a close guess. No, uh, cricket is, yeah, polo, yes. But also, before I let out the cat, so to speak, which is one of the oldest sporting institution in Bangalore? Any guesses? Indian Gymkhana Club. It is old, but before that, there was another institution. So I'll come to that. Now, I mentioned about, the three significant disciplines that were a big part of Bangalore sporting culture. One was golf, second was polo, I mean boxing, and then polo. These were the three sports in the 1800s, big time in Bangalore. Um, so one of the oldest sporting facilities or clubs in Bangalore is the Bangalore Golf Club. Yeah. It was started in 1876, and I think we should all be proud of this club's rich, venerable old history, because it is not just the oldest club, but in Bangalore, but also worldwide, because the British started a golf club in Scotland, but it had closed for some time. So, in that sense, the Bangalore Golf Club is known for continuous operation. So, and another feather in Bangalore Golf Club's cap is that it was not just a club for, the members to come and just while away their time or have a merry evening or drinks and, sort of network and that sort of thing. It was, they had regular tournaments, golf tournaments. So there were teams and players coming from outside cities coming to Bangalore, and there were a lot of tournaments that happened here. So that was something really remarkable, which we should all be proud of. Um, and after that, but a lot of golf clubs have sprung up in different parts of Bangalore. Today, I think you see many more. But the Bangalore Golf Club, which is near Hotel Ashok, I think is the oldest and, with one of the richest histories. So just like golf, boxing too has a very rich and hoary history. Um, and thanks again to the British, when they came in the 1800s, it's the British soldiers more for physical fitness or also, to keep that fighting spirit alive in them. Um, Boxing was encouraged a lot. And there were lots of boxing bouts and matches that happened here. And the British soldiers who were stationed in the Bangalore cantonment were trained by professional boxers in boxing. So there were matches between mostly British and British boxers, but subsequently, even Indian local boxers began taking part, and there were all kinds of boxers taking part. And would anybody take a guess where these boxing bouts used to happen? Sorry? You're right. Yeah, good one. The Opera Theatre at the intersection of Brigade Road and Residency Road. Today, I think Samsung has it there, some kind of a retail outlet. But it was an opera was more like, a ballroom, a kind of a hall where these boxing bouts used to happen. And they used to attract a lot of crowds. You see, at that point, there wasn't much entertainment in Bangalore. There weren't too many other sports. The population was not large. But so any kind of sporting activity just drew a lot of people. And these boxing matches were really very popular. And I think by the right from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, till about 1930, 40s, boxing was very popular in Bangalore. And you had a lot of international boxers also coming here and, participating. And some of Bangalore's boxers even went on to win national titles, international, I mean, at the South Asia level titles. Some of you may have heard about Gunboat Jack, one character who was in Bangalore. I'll probably, hopefully, share a picture later, but and tell you a little more about him. And also, the famous Suarez family in Bangalore, Marjorie Suarez and Arthur Suarez was a very good boxer too. So, talking about boxing, much before, we had all these cricketing icons like Prasanna, Chandrasekhar, Vishwanath, Kirmani, Binni, Brijesh Patel, Kumble, Rahul Dravid and the others. Bangalore's poster boys were um, young Taly, Gunboat Jack, and all boxers. You had no cricket at that time. I'm talking of much before pre-independence days. And it was the boxers, golfers, these were sort of the poster boys of Bangalore sporting arena. Um, just to give you all a sense of how important and how popular boxing was in Bangalore, I'll read a newspaper report that was published in September 1943, that is a couple of years before independence. Um, that report was on a match between All India lightweight champion Young Taly and Royal Air Force boxer Muang Thong. And I quote, "It is doubtful if in any other city in India, boxing is kept up to such a high pitch as in Bangalore. It looks as though the art of self-defense is about the biggest sporting draw in this station. Fans defy the weather and other inconveniences to see a really good fight." So that's how important boxing was, and it wasn't put in the newspapers. People spoke about it. So, and that is, I'm talking about a century ago. So, um, also the popularity of boxing was due to, a particular tabloid that was run by a couple in Bangalore. They covered most of the boxing matches and brought out this tabloid giving extensive coverage to these boxing matches. And whatever proceeds were collected from the sale of this tabloid were commendably sent to the Red Cross. So that was also something very remarkable. And yeah, so, but with independence, I think, and the departure of the British soldiers and the Brits itself, um, boxing also sort of, in a way, ended in Bangalore, but not entirely, because boxing continued to be followed and became popular within the secure walls of the MEG, which is the Madras Engineering Group near Ulsoor Lake. Now, the MEG somehow, had a few people who knew, who had learned boxing and began training all these young recruits into boxing. And of course, we all know so many boxers from MEG have become national champions in the different weight categories. So that was something that the MEG sort of carried forward, that boxing legacy. And I don't think any of you here would be of my age as a senior citizen, but when we were in school, I was from St. Germain's, we had boxing in school. And it was compulsory. We had one period where, the boxing gloves would come into the class, and you'd be terrified if you were pitted against somebody who was good, because all you would do is just, defend your face. And it was not, I'm not just saying it was only in Germain's, but it was also in Joseph's, Bishop Cotton's, and everywhere. And sometime in the early 70s, a boy from Bishop Cotton's died during a boxing bout. And that is when boxing was banned in schools. So that was the end of boxing. So, but it's got a very checkered, a very fascinating kind of history. Now, moving on to polo. Again, Bangalore, because of its lovely weather, what at that time people used to call, the Brits used to call it as brass monkey weather. I don't know what kind of explanation to give for that term, but it was, Bangalore had such a pleasant kind of weather, and so it suited the game of polo. And polo was played at, the ASC, what is now the ASC Center at Agram. It was initially played in Domlur because polo was started by the Bangalore Turf Club when the Bangalore Turf Club was not now on Racecourse Road, but in Domlur. And way back in 1920, the Bangalore Turf Club started polo matches. And again, polo too attracted teams from outside. There were a lot of matches that were played. So it, popularized the game. And it continued as long as the Brits were there, and even post-independence, there were matches. In fact, there are people who tell you that even in the ground opposite the BRV theatre, There used to be the KSRP grounds, Reserve Police grounds. And they have seen people as way back, I mean, as late as in the 60s playing polo on cycles in Bangalore, which is quite interesting. So polo also sort of, became a very popular sport. So these were the three basically, boxing, golf, boxing, and polo. But equally, even older than these games, these sports, was wrestling. What was typically in the Indian scenario called Kusti. It was mud wrestling, and Bangalore has again a very rich and interesting history when it comes to wrestling and mud wrestling. So there were these karadis, garadis, sorry, that were all over Bangalore. There were some 50, 60 garadis in Bangalore, and they used to have these wrestling matches. Many people used to come and watch those matches because, you're fascinated by fights and so on, and you want to see who wins, just like boxing. This is on the mat or in the mud. Now, so they had tournaments, and believe it or not, there were these wrestlers who came from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nepal too, all the way to Bangalore to take part in these matches. And but somehow over the years, all these garadis sort of slowly sort of lost their popularity with more and more other matches coming up. And then wrestling became also an international sport at the national, Asian, and Olympics. So that was mat wrestling, the more modern wrestling. So I think this lost its popularity, and the garadi is closed. But one of the oldest garadi in Bangalore is the Kunjana garadi, which was started in 1900. I think it's somewhere in the Majestic area. And that continues, I think, to be there. And today, I think there are about a dozen or so garadis in Bangalore that still function. Some are also as close by in Shivaji Nagar and so on. So, but equally, Bangalore, Koramangala, and some places have this Bangalore mat wrestling academies and so on. So, wrestling still a fairly popular sport, I would say. Now, as someone expected cricket to be a very popular game in the 1800s, cricket did start with, again, the Brits. The British came here and they played cricket, and it was mostly among themselves, because for cricket, you need to have a bat, you need to have cricket balls, you need to have wickets and all of that. And they could afford all of that. So, and I think the local people couldn't really have that. And the matches were mostly played between the British Army officers here within Bangalore. But whenever there were tournaments held, they would play matches against the Kolar Goldfield officers, which was largely dominated by the British officers. So that way these tournaments began, and they started playing. But gradually also Indians started playing. And there was this gentleman called, his name is J.G. Tate. He was an Englishman, and he was the principal of Central College, because Central College is one of the oldest Bangalore colleges. He sort of introduced cricket in the college, and he said, we must form a team, we must have regular matches with other teams in Bangalore. They even played against the European Gymkhana with the KGF officers. And that way, cricket sort of started taking root in Bangalore. And cricket also spread to the city areas, the Pete areas and the cantonment areas. So, in fact, the Pete area cricketers were supposedly quite good and gave a good run for their money for the Brits. And so they've even won a lot of matches against them despite being late starters. But so a lot of domestic cricket began in Bangalore. And because of all these college matches, a lot of Bangalore local cricketers began shining, and they came to be known well. And one among them was B. Jayaram. from the Baswangudi area. He was such a good batsman and cricketer that he was picked to play for the London County Club alongside none other than W.G. Grace, one of cricketers' biggest names of that era. So, and Bangalore Jayaram was also one of Bangalore's first cricketers to be in the national Indian 11 that was selected to tour England in 1911. So, in that sense, B. Jairam can be rightly called Bangalore's first cricketing hero. Of course, he passed away many years ago, but he should be remembered as Bangalore's first cricketing hero. And he was also the boyhood hero of statesman and philosopher Rajagopalachari. And I came across this little tidbit in Ramchandra Guha's, one of his essays on cricket. And that's, I think, a very fascinating thing. So as cricket became popular here, it was mostly like, local matches that were played between the cricketers, between small little clubs and so on, for quite a few years. It was only in 1934, on the initiative of some cricket players, that they sort of started the Mysore State Cricket Association in Bangalore. And that association sort of put in place, a 5-year league tournament and had regular organized official matches. So I think that gave a tremendous boost to cricket in Bangalore. And you had schools, colleges encouraging cricket a lot. So, and that's how hundreds of Bangalore boys and much later, of course, women took to cricket. And another interesting thing is about the cricket grounds. There weren't too many cricket grounds in Bangalore. Of course, you had the Indian Gymkhana grounds in Coxtown. You had the Central College grounds. And the earliest proper cricket ground was the RSI ground on MG Road. So many of the big matches between the Brits and the Bangalore Europeans and the KGF Europeans was played at the RSI. But later, of course, when bigger matches and a lot more matches had to play, it was taking place at Central College or at the Gymkhana grounds. So those were the ones. But later, the YMCA grounds, Malleshwaram had its grounds. Schools, fortunately, were built in such a way that they had adequate provision for cricket, hockey, football grounds. Like you look at all the schools, particularly in this area, and even some, in Malleshwaram or in Rajaji Nagar, they have fairly big grounds where a decent cricket match can take place. So, and it may come as a surprise, but also before Kantirava Stadium was actually built as a proper stadium, it was a lake on one side and there was some open space there. So cricket matches were also played there until the stadium was built. Cricket matches were also played inside Cubbon Park where the City Central Library is. It was an open space. So you had all these open spaces which facilitated people from nearby areas, to just come and have a proper match on a weekend or something like that. I think I should also mention about the role of private clubs that went on to enhance the popularity of cricket. One of the oldest clubs in Bangalore is the Bangalore United Cricket Club, BUCC. They were very popular in the 60s and 70s when, before all the commercialization of cricket began. Same in the same vein, there was FUCC, Friends Union Cricket Club. And then there were city cricketers like Prasanna, Chandrasekhar, Vishwanath, all these legends who are among the pioneering cricketers of Bangalore post-independence were all members of one of these clubs. And that's how they got into even the state team, then in the Indian team and so on. So I also would like to mention, some of the coaches and former cricket players who, after their retirement, dedicated a lot of time, energy, and continued their passion for cricket. And they coached a lot of these youngsters by, running these clubs. So some of them are like Safi Darsha, Keki Tarapur, G. Kasturi Rangan, L.T. Natraj, V.T. Krishnamurthy, Premachandra, then the Patels of Gandhinagar, like Brijesh Patel, his uncles, Y.B. Patel, and others. K.S. Vishwanath, Puttanna Kesi, N. Doraiswamy, who was involved with the Friends Union Cricket Club, all of that. So I think we as Bangaloreans and also history must remember these people who sort of contributed immensely to a game which is now almost a religion in our country. I'm sure most of you won't disagree with that. And last but not least, when we talk about cricket in Bangalore, you cannot forget about this gentleman who was actually a lawyer by profession, but gave up his law career. He wasn't a cricketer. He never, I think, played cricket, but gave up his law profession to take up administration of cricket. And he was such a brilliant administrator that he went on to become the chief of the Board of Cricket Control of India. Any guesses? No, Arun Jaitley is not a Bangalorean, no? A cricket stadium here is named after him. Absolutely. So M. Chinnaswamy was the person in question who, gave up his law career to be a cricket administrator. And he did a lot for cricket, went on to become the board. So rightfully, they named the Bangalore Cricket Stadium the M. Chinnaswamy Stadium. And I think he, in a way, embodies the spirit of Bangalore. When the topic of women's cricket comes up, Bangalore comes right on top. Because when women's cricket started in the 70s, and it was still in its nascent stages, but when the state teams were formed, there were about 8 or 9 teams, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, all these big cities kind of thing. There were the national tournaments and all of that. And then one national tournament was held interstate, and they wanted to select an Indian team. And, this had a very good round of matches and all of that. At the end of it, they selected an Indian team, and the captain was not from Calcutta, Delhi, Bombay, or Madras. It was from Bangalore. I'm sure you all know who it is. Exactly. So Shanta is a legend in her own right, who went on to create many records. She was the first captain of the Indian team. I mean, that's such an achievement for Bangalore itself, right? There are many others like that who sort of have, Bangalore can claim many firsts due to some sports persons. But for a woman to, take the bat when people were also not too encouraging of women taking to cricket and so on, to shine and to become India's captain. But there were also others like Pushpa Kumar, who was also in the Indian team at that stage, and much later Kalpana Venkatachar from Bangalore, who became the India's wicketkeeper. She started playing cricket in VV Puram on the road, on the streets, and then went on to become India's wicketkeeper. Mamta Mabin, another legend in her own right. She's today a cricket coach for the women's cricket team in Hong Kong, Malaysia, and all these places. So, it sort of makes you really swell with pride when you listen to these stories of Bangaloreans who went on to sort of really become big. So that's sort of, and one more last thing about cricket is when the cricket board started the junior nationals for women, the first junior nationals was won by Karnataka. And most of the members were from Bangalore. They were all schoolgirls from Bangalore. So that's much about cricket. I have to move on a little bit to hockey and football. Hockey too, just like cricket, was started by the British in Bangalore. It was played again in largely in the cantonment area, in the defense kind of establishment grounds, Sullivan Police grounds, the parade grounds, and all these places. And just like cricket, clubs were formed, and it sort of gained popularity over the years. But post-independence, I think, or just before independence, a lot of schools in Bangalore started encouraging even hockey as much as cricket. And I think Bangalore had a lot more hockey matches than probably cricket, because there were so many inter-school tournaments, I'm told. And I think that is one reason which, I mean, Karnataka, the men's team didn't fare so well at the national level as much as the women in the 50s and 60s. But all the same, they did well. And although India's first participation in the Olympics for hockey was in 1928 in Amsterdam, um, Bangaloreans first got a chance to represent India in the 1952 Helsinki Olympics. There were two Bangalore guys in the Indian team. One was Muniswamy Rajgopal and the other was Chinnadurai Deshmuthu. Both of them, Bangaloreans, were in the Indian team for the 1952 Helsinki Olympics. So after that, there were many others. In the 60s, there were quite a few from MEG and other places who represented Karnataka, as well as found a place in the Indian team. And there were a lot of public sector organizations in Bangalore, right, like BEL, HAL, HMT, ITI, and so on, who recruited sportsmen, who encouraged sports persons, and they all got jobs because of sports. And they also had very good hockey teams, and many of their players went on to be in the state as well as the national team. But there's nothing to beat the Karnataka or the Bangalore hockey scene when it comes to women's hockey. It's unbelievable that in the 60s, Karnataka team continuously won the national women's hockey championship for 7 years in a row. Uh, that's something really unbelievable, because after that, Karnataka, I don't think, has even won the nationals even once. But this team, which won the nationals 7 years in a row, had all the players from Bangalore, including, the three Brito sisters who are very popular and Arjuna Award winners. So the talk was at that time that if Bangalore sent two teams from Bangalore A and Bangalore B, both would come to the finals, because the teams were so good. And Punjab, Maharashtra, Bombay, Calcutta, West Bengal, they were so good, but they were unable to tackle these hockey women, So that was something, that was the standard of women's hockey that time. And when you talk to these players who are now in their 80s and late 70s, they tell you it was something they were all passionate about. There were so many inter-school tournaments. It seems when there were matches that were played between schools, the entire school would get a holiday to go for the matches to cheer up the teams. So that was the kind of, fan following and the sporting culture that was prevalent in Bangalore. Similarly, football too had a very interesting kind of a history in Bangalore. A lot of football came. I mean, I don't think it was so much um, that you could owe to the British, but sometime in the late 40s or something, during the World War II and all of that, Italian soldiers came as prisoners of war to Bangalore, and they were stationed somewhere in, where the parade grounds are on MG Road and that sort of vicinity. They started playing football. And of course, even today, Italy is a very good football playing country. So, and many of the workers who worked in all these places played with the Italians and learned the game. And slowly, football became popular in this area, particularly in the Ulsoor sort of area, Ulsoor, Austin Town, and so on. So many of these youngsters took to the game, and once football became popular, of course, even schools, colleges, all of that, started enhancing the popularity of the game. Um, but interestingly, do you all know that there's a mini Brazil in Bangalore, which is near Ulsoor, where's that 515 Gautampura? There are hundreds of over the decades, hundreds of footballers from that area have played for different clubs in Bangalore, have played for the state, have played for India as well. And if you go to that area, you'll always find somebody playing football either on the streets or in some ground, even on their terraces, they'll be playing football. And you'll be surprised, but you will probably like to go and pose next to a statue of the legendary Pele, a Brazilian football player. That's why it's called mini Brazil, you know. So, and Bangalore had quite a few, these Bangalore footballers played barefoot those days. Even when they went to play in London for one of the Olympics, I think they played barefoot because they were just not given shoes, or I don't know why they weren't given or what the reason was. But that's a bit about football, and many footballers from Bangalore who are now retired, living in Bangalore, you do know where they live, they interact with you. They all have played for India in different Olympics. Um, so, and talking about football, Bangalore can be proud of one more aspect about football, which is the Stafford Challenge Cup. That was started by the Staffordshire Regiment in 1938. It's one of the oldest football tournaments in South India, and it was extremely popular. When the matches were played, I remember even in the 80s and early 90s, the matches used to be played in the Kantirava Stadium. 1 or 2 hours before the match began, the stadium used to be packed. That was the kind of fan following and crowds that football, the Stafford Cup sort of attracted. And there were teams that came even from abroad. Like from Iraq, a team came once. And in fact, in 1992 or 93, I think a team that came from Iraq won the tournament. And they were given the Stafford Challenge Cup. They took it with them, and that cup never came back to Bangalore. It seems during the war in Iraq that was robbed or lost, and it disappeared. And with that, the Stafford Challenge Cup also ended in Bangalore. But that's the sort of fascinating history about, football. Another sport which Bangalore has done very well is tennis. So I was telling you about the Gulf War and how the Stafford Cup lost. But let me take you back to 1939 when World War II began. World War II had just begun 1939, and a Bangalore woman goes to the nationals and wins the women's singles tennis championship. And that was the first time a Bangalore woman was winning the national tennis championship. Of course, she was a British lady, Laura Woodbridge, and she was a very good tennis player. She lived for many years in Bangalore. She never went back to Britain. She continued to live in Bangalore, and she passed away, I think, sometime in 2010 or 15. I'm not sure which date. And she was buried also here in Bangalore. So Laura Woodbridge is one of the pioneering women tennis players of Bangalore, who not only won the national championship twice, she also became runner-up a couple of times. And soon after her, there was another woman tennis player, Dechu Appaya, who became Dechu Appaya Mula later. She won the national women's title in 1959. And she also went and took part in the Wimbledon Junior Junior Women's Championship. And she continued playing. She was number one in India from 1958-59 till 62-63 for about 4 to 5 years. Today, if you go to Bangalore Club, anytime between 3 or 4 o'clock, you will see Dechu Appaya, and you will see another national champion, Udaya Kumar, who won in 1972. Udaya Kumar beat, this tough cop, Kiran Bedi, you all must have heard of in Delhi. She was a national champion, and Udaya Kumar of Bangalore dethroned her in the finals. So Udaya even plays now tennis in Bangalore Club. So that's so much about these women tennis players. And thanks again to the British who built these clubs, like Bangalore Club, Bowring Institute, Century Club, and, all of these, and they made provisions for tennis, and they all played tennis also a lot. So, and as I said earlier, how Indians benefited from all these facilities. And before I move on from tennis, I must mention about one of the pioneering men players of Bangalore, even before independence, B.R. Kapanipati. He was a national level player. He was Karnataka's #1 for almost a decade, and he, after he retired, his contribution to sports has been really commendable. He has given all his time as coach, administrator, manager, accompanying teams on tournaments, even refereeing matches. The India-Australia Davis Cup tie, which was played in '72 in Bangalore Club, he was one of the referees. And his children were all sports persons. His son, Arun Kumar, was the India Junior National Table Tennis Champion twice. And he was Asia Junior Table Tennis Champion once. Of course, soon after winning all those, he pursued education. Arun went to the US to study, and today he's in California, retired, but still continuing to play tennis. So that's about tennis. Another game which makes us very proud, Bangaloreans, is badminton, because that was a game, again, just like how we had Shanta Rangaswamy as a pioneering woman cricketer, you had Prakash Padukone, right? Who, I mean, how come a person from Delhi, Calcutta and Bombay had, even Chandigarh had excellent badminton players, but none of them have won the All England badminton singles title, which a simple Bangalore boy from Malleshwaram went on to win. So Prakash Padukone's achievements are really something incredible, and something that I mean, later some others have emulated, like Gopi and others, but he was the first one in 1980 to win. And at a very young age, he went on to win the national title, doubles title with his brother Pradeep, and he really put Bangalore on the national and international badminton match. And I think we ought to give credit also to his father, Ramesh Padukone, who was instrumental in starting, a badminton club in Malleshwaram. It was in 1949 that the Malleshwaram Residents Association, or the Konkan Association, was building a wedding hall and a kind of a social hall in Malleshwaram. And Ramesh Padukone, Prakash's father, requested them, please build it big enough to accommodate a badminton court. And that was done, and thankfully, badminton matches could be played, because when there were no weddings taking place and the hall was free, everybody could go and practice, play there, and it became really a very hot spot for badminton. So a lot of players from the Malleshwaram area went on to be Karnataka's best players, like Narendra Obayakar and the Padukone brothers and all of them. So yeah, so that was something that happened there, and I think the Malleshwaram Hall was also host to the first South Zone inter-university badminton matches. So, what was supposed to be a wedding and social hall went on to host even inter-university matches, and later became, a venue for so many other matches. Women's badminton, there were not too many, but there was Tripura Vishwanath, who was very good in badminton in the 60s. Even after her marriage and having a child, she went on to win state and national championships. And she also played alongside her daughter a doubles match at the national level. So you had all these legends in Bangalore who, have sort of largely been forgotten. And I think it's important to sort of revive their memories and so on, which I have done partly, bringing out my books on the sports legends of Bangalore. One is Playback 1, and what was launched in December was Playback 2. So there are about 60 legends that have been featured in these two books. So that was that. Now, also about table tennis, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and some of the western states were very good in table tennis. But people have forgotten that way back in 1956, a Bangalore person called Krishna Nagaraj, he went on to win, several matches at the national level. When the World Table Tennis Championships were held in Tokyo, he reached the quarterfinals and he missed reaching the semifinals by a whisker, by just 1 point. Otherwise, he would have been in the semifinals and maybe a bronze medalist. But Krishna Nagaraj's feat, FEAT, hasn't been emulated till today. No Indian has reached the quarterfinals of a world table tennis. I'm talking about the men. So look at way back in 1956, a Bangalorean's achievement. And that's, again, something commendable. So then, of course, you had a lot of others like Sai Kumar and Kabat Jayant, Arun Kumar, of course, Lakshmi Karan. They all went on to win at the national level, and they became good TT players. But again, another Malleshwaram lady called Usha Sundarraj in the 60s won the national singles title for 5 years, and she won runner-up about 7 years. So again, we've not had that kind of a champion ever since the 60s. And it was after 50 years, after Usha Sundarraj had won the nationals, that a Bangalore person, Archana Kamath, went on to win the national women's singles title just about 2 years ago or something. So that's another incredible achievement. But similarly, other games, were not so popular, and Bangaloreans didn't do that very well as some of the other games. For instance, basketball. You did have people like Guru Murthy, who played for India in the Olympics. You had Nandini Prasad Basappa and Jaivanti Shyam, who were India's captains for national basketball. And they are still coaching. They are in their 60s, but they still coach today. And thanks to all the coaching and training and the game playing days of their earlier career. Another sport which one has to mention when talking about Bangalore is cue sports like billiards and snooker. From the 40s, 50s, again, you've got to give credit to the British because they started cue sports in Bangalore and all the clubs. But many locals benefited and they started playing these games. They did very well for themselves post-independence. Bangalore's Arvind Saur went on to win the national title a couple of times. Then there was Srinivasa Murthy, who won the national title. And now you have Pankaj Advani, who's actually a protege of Arvind Saur. Arvind Saur, even now at his ripe old age, coaches him. Pankaj Advani continues to win world titles. Again, another Bangalore boy. So lastly, I would just like to focus, although alphabetically I should have started with athletics first, but I've kept it for the last because in athletics, Bangalore's history speaks a lot. And we've never had that kind of achievements or records created as Bangalore athletes created way back from early independence days. Like one of the first national champions from Bangalore was Marjorie Suarez. If there are anybody from Bishop Cotton Girls School here would remember her, she was one of India's finest athletes. She was Karnataka's hockey captain, basketball captain. She took part in the first Asian Games that India hosted. The first ever Asian Games in 1951, India hosted. And Marjorie Suarez was a participant there. She missed the bronze medal in high jump, but she continued winning the nationals and so on. But she devoted all her life to coaching, being a PT teacher at Bishop Cotton Girls School. And even after her retirement, she continued to encourage sports persons and so on. Excuse me. Now, the first Olympics after India's independence and also after the Second World War, because Olympics was sort of cancelled during the World War. So after World War II, the first Olympics was held in 1948. And at those Olympics, there were two Bangalore boys who took part, represented India. One was Eric Prabhakar, who reached the quarterfinals in the 100 meters. And the other was Henry Ribello, who represented India in triple jump. He was a definite prospect for a medal, but in his just before his jumps, he pulled his muscle or he suffered an injury and he couldn't jump at all. He had to be carried away from the field. Now, both these are Bangalore boys from Baldwin's Boys High School. And then, of course, in the 60s came Kenneth Powell, who took part in the Rome Olympics and was one of, again, Bangalore's sprinter, fastest runner, and so on. And subsequent to that, there were many others who continued, shining at the national level. Now, when it comes to women athletes, I think no state or city in India can beat Bangalore when it comes to sprinters. Right from the days of Marjorie Suarez, Diana Syme was also another national record holder. She was a sports teacher at Sophia Girls' School. Diana Syme was in the hurdles, long jumps, short sprints, was a national champion. So from those days to the late 60s and 70s, Nirmala Uttaya, she was called the golden girl of India's athletics. She was the fastest sprinter in India. Irene Saldana, then there was Angel Mary Joseph, and much later Ashwini Nachappa, whom many of you all must have heard, Reith Abraham. They were all national champions who went on to represent India. And so, today you have probably a few runners like that, but typically the fastest runner at inter-university all India level used to be from Bangalore, and the Bangalore women always used to win the 4x100 relay. So that was how the Bangalore women shone at the national level. And the icing on the cake, so to speak, was when in the 80s, the government decided to form a sports ministry, and they appointed a woman as a sports minister. And who it had to be? It had to be a Bangalore woman, Margaret Alva. So, that's considered to be like really the cherry on the cake for Bangalore sporting achievements and history. So, before I sign off, this is something that Bangalore has to be proud of, that they've spawned so many national champions. No other city in India has sort of thrown up so many champions, national and international, and it's almost become like Bangalore was known as like a nursery for sports persons. You could start here, grow and flourish at national, international levels. And so if you look into the reasons why many, even at, when you talk to national level players from other states, they wonder like, why is Bangalore, how come Bangalore sports persons are so many national champions and so on? There are many factors, I think. One is the climate of Bangalore was such, you didn't have these extreme heat summers or extreme winters. So the climate was very conducive for sports persons to take part in sports. And, a lot of PSUs, public sector undertakings, banks and others encourage sports. And I think the sports culture that was seeded very early in the 1800s and 1900s helped this culture to sort of evolve and grow. And that was also another reason. Thankfully, there was no television until 82. So, the only entertainment was sports and perhaps films, because you had so many theaters in Bangalore. So that was just something that helped in a way indirectly. And there were many benefactors, coaches, philanthropists who encouraged sports people. Like Deccan Herald's owner, Netkalappa, was a very generous businessman who helped a lot of sports persons. Similarly, there were a lot of others also. And another thing was Bangalore always had a very high spectator interest. If you had to, like we as schoolboys in the 70s, remember going for a cricket match when the West Indies came here. The stadium used to be packed. You would get down at Shivaji Nagar, the bus stand, and you would walk. Hordes of people, all roads were leading to the Chinnaswamy Stadium. If there was an athletic meet in Kantirava Stadium, it was packed. Sullivan Police Grounds, football grounds, everything was packed. So this kind of a fan culture was a huge shot in the arm for sports to grow and flourish in Bangalore. And today, it's not the same, you know. I don't know, I've not gone recently to see any actual sporting events because you're comfortable sitting in the drawing room of your house and watching it on television. But I think, you know, it's time to sort of introspect a little bit. And given the theme of today's Creative Mornings, which is yeah, the path or going the way forward. So what is the way forward or what is the path? I think Bangalore needs to do a lot of introspection. The policymakers, the sports bodies, former sports persons, a lot of people who are involved in sports have to come together to make concerted efforts to sort of examine why Bangalore is not so good as it was at one time. Why isn't there another Prakash Padukone or an Usha Sundaraj or Dechu Apaya or, you know, the hockey women's team? If in the 60s with basic facilities, those women used to go cycling from their houses at 5 in the morning to practice. Today you have cars and vehicles to take you, but you don't have these kind of champions. If they could win 6 national titles in a row, why can't people today in Bangalore, today Orissa, you know, it's all the rural area girls who are shining at the national level. You look at the Indian women's hockey team today, you have all these rural area girls who are so committed and so good in their sport. From Orissa, from Northeast, from Haryana, and all these places. So I think a lot of introspection has to be done, and one has to examine where exactly we have gone wrong to sort of bring back the glory days of Bangalore. That's it from me. If you... Oh.
We have about 15 minutes to take questions, which sir would be happy to answer. Also, just to mention, we requested sir to bring some of his books. They are up on sale. Playback 1 and 2 are up on sale at the desk if anyone is interested. We request people who have questions to raise their hands and please stand to ask the question. And we'll try and cover as many as possible. I think the first hand was raised there.
Yeah, hi, my name is Kiran. And when you were covering or doing a research about the boxing arenas and the boxing bouts, did you come across any cultures of placing bets?
Sorry, cultures of?
Bet placing, like
Bet,
because there are two individual
placing
boxers.
bets betting on each other. No, I don't think I've come across any bits about placing bets. But you know, even if there was, it must have been done unofficially on the quiet. But there was nothing like official, you know, betting on a particular boxer and so on. Typically, you know, like boxing matches, even in the West, they do have betting on these players. They may have been informally been doing it, or you know, they would probably call these boxers at a private event or something. But at these public boxing bouts that happened in official arenas, there wasn't anything. I didn't come across anything. But yeah, they were, and I think it is true that they did not have this kind of betting, because sometimes some of the spoils have to be shared with the winner and probably the loser also. But the boxers were pretty poor, you know, and some of them fell on very hard times. When I was researching that I came across particularly Gunboat Jack. He was someone from the US, an African American, who, while going on a ship somewhere off Madras, he jumped off the ship and came off on land to India. That's why his name is Gunboat, because he jumped off the ship. And Jack is because I think he used a jackhammer to attack people and so on. Yeah, and he was in he made Bangalore his home. He took part in boxing matches. He was extremely good in boxing, I think in the welterweight category. So after he won Asian titles, nobody could beat him. He was so strong and good in boxing. And at one stage, he like I think when he retired and he was sort of getting older, he decided to become a bouncer at Basco's. You know, it was a nightclub on Brigade Road. This Basco's was there till about the 70s. It was also, you know, those days Bangalore had cabarets, right? So it was a cabaret joint, and these kind of joints had these bouncers there. And because he was a boxer and a very hefty, strong fellow, he stood outside. Many people have seen him. Then he lost that job. Uh, After that, he really fell on hard days. He used to walk up and down Brigade Road with a Bible, preaching, just sitting down and praying and all of that. And some years later, his sister in America came to know that, you know, because he was written about that such a famous boxer is fallen on hard times. He was written about, and that reached his sister in America. She reached out to the consulate in India and told them, please get hold of him and bring him back. So he was taken back to America where he died. Yeah. So that's the story of Gunboat Jack. There's a whole story about him that I've written in the playback too. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for the insight. I'm Vijay Surana. I'm a lawyer. Uh, I give an insight and I want your opinion on
Oh,
it.
sure.
You come from an era where sports was taken as a part of a life, a culture. You've spoken about in the army fields, in the schools, in the colleges. And just now you referred, that famous sportsman died penniless, right? We, I'm from 80s. So I'm from a generation where used to chase the glory of a sports person, to be like a sports person, to have that fame. Today, we feel, sports is directly proportionate to the commercial success it
Very
can
true.
give. Right? Why women's cricket is not as successful as men's cricket? How much of commercialization it can be done? How much money it can come? Now, this is a vicious circle. Unless it can generate money, who will invest in it? How will the sports grow, continue? What are your opinions on this? Today, as a parent, if somebody wants to select a sport, they look, what will this sport give you? This will not make you a brand ambassador even of a local brand. So, and the age of a sports person. We've spoken someone going for 3 Olympics, 4 Olympics. Today, we are telling that sports person life is 7 years, 10 years,
Yeah.
done. So, what are your opinion on that?
Sure.
Thank you.
You hit the nail on the head. And what you said completely resonates with what I've been thinking, and I'm sure will resonate with everybody else. Today, one of the biggest factors is look at how our city has become. Now, sports is something that should be inculcated in children at a very young age. When we were growing up, we had so much of open space, right? We lived in independent houses. We played within our compounds. We played on the streets, cricket. We played hockey, football, everything on the streets. Badminton across our gate. One would be outside, one would be inside, or on our terraces. So, you had the space. Today, there's this apartment culture. It's become a complete concrete jungle. Where is a small little ground for children to play? Apart from empty streets where we all grew up in the 60s and 70s, we had space in our compounds to play French cricket or whatever. But we also had grounds nearby where we would go to play with everybody in the area on the street, like everybody from our street. We had formed teams in our areas. So that was the kind of lifestyle. But today, you don't. See why even in Bombay, Bombay apartments were there for a longer time. So I think Bombay didn't have so many sports people. Also, one reason because children didn't have that kind of space to play. They were sort of like caught within the apartment itself. So today, that is one. And forget about playing area. Do you even can go for a decent walk? Bangalore has changed. It's not even a pedestrian-friendly area. You can't cross the road today with the rush and crush of traffic. So it's become extremely difficult. Parents are scared to send their children out because, they'll say, oh my God, look at the traffic outside, and it's risky. So parents who are very keen, especially sports persons who want their children to take after sports, take them on their scooters or cars to the grounds, okay, and remain there. Mothers wait there and till they finish and come back. But that sounds so ironical when ideally a sports person should go jogging as warm up to the sports grounds or cycle as all of us did. We cycled till Kantirava Stadium. Even the famous sports persons like Nirmala Uttaya and all of them cycled all the way from Mount Carmel's hostel to Kantirava Stadium at 5 in the morning. So their warm up was already done. So they would just do the sprints and use the hurdles or the high jump pits and so on. The facilities there and come back. Now, if you take children in cars, they're so comfortable. There's no that physical energy. For them to really take part. So these are some of the basic factors, right? That is one. And as you rightly pointed out, and as what I mentioned early in my talk, today sports is such a big thing because of the money involved. There's so much of money involved and everything revolves around money. Who's sponsoring, how many TV channels are going to live stream this, the commercials that are going to sponsor, all of that. So, and look at the money that cricketers get. It's so lopsided. Now, why can't even other sports disciplines get that kind of money? Individual, athletics, for instance, or badminton or table tennis, you're winning a national title purely with your individual effort. Whereas cricket, hockey, it's team effort. But look at the money that they get. So, there are innumerable little factors that have led to this situation. And I think those need to be addressed, looked into. But, a way of life itself has changed, right? And if we have to just talk only about Bangalore, Bangalore has completely changed from what it was to its present. And today, everybody, rather than become an athlete or a sports person, wants to become an IT professional, you know, give them phones when they are even not able to talk. Babies are sitting with phones and playing. So they all may become very good in computer games and, these kind of sorry? Yeah, the gaming industry. And wherever you go, I mean, I'm really saddened to see when I go to so many houses, children are all the time buried in their phones. You know, they don't read, they don't play outside. And as I said, there's no space for them to play. They need that space and thing. But sadly, that's not happened in Bangalore today because every square feet costs so much in Bangalore that, even a small vacant plot is quickly lapped up by these real estate sharks. So you just don't have space for them to play. And hats off to the ones who really take the trouble to take their children to the stadiums and encourage them to play.
Hi, I'm Balraj. It was a very fascinating talk. It was a revelation in the sense that I've been in Bangalore for 35 years and many of the names were very new. So it was very enlightening. I wanted to kind of just ask a question. Bangalore as a city has had this British being here. There are a lot of different communities. So is the cosmopolitan culture of Bangalore a reason for such rich sport culture? How do you compare it with other cities? Why didn't, for example, Chennai or Calcutta, didn't they have that such advantage? Maybe because you are focusing on Bangalore, we know what Bangalore is, or at least from your perspective and things like that. Could you kind of reflect on that?
Right. The Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, and Chennai also had a lot of sports persons. Like, look at the cricketers from Bombay, like Sunil Gavaskar, and even athletes and other sports disciplines. Even Chennai, for that matter, Vijay Amritraj, Ramanathan Krishnan, Ramesh Krishnan, and even other disciplines. There were Calcutta, Delhi too. But, those cities were they had a headway much before Bangalore. So they should have had better champions and so on, right? But again, they were also like big mega cities, so to speak. Like they were the metros of India. And I think probably I'm thinking commuting distances must have been vast. And in Bombay, particularly, you had to go by trains given the city's topography and setup. So probably that could be one reason. But Bangalore, I mean, it had a different lifestyle. It was a laid back city. It was a small town, but and it was also a tier two city. It was a pensioners' paradise. There was not much traffic. People had a lot of spaces to play, and you could commute. You could even walk and run to the grounds. Like for instance, Irene Saldana was one of the long-standing athletes of Bangalore. She lived in our neighborhood. She would go cycling at 5:30 from Bangalore. Some days, if she woke up and she saw her cycle tire punctured, at that time there wouldn't be any repair guy. So she would just go slowly jogging all the way to the stadium, you know, and there wasn't any traffic those days. So, and many of the cricketers, like women cricketers too, played, they were not allowed to go to the grounds very far. So they played with the boys on the streets in their houses. And Bangalore had this kind of culture, where you could play in your compound, you could play on your streets, you could jump over walls, you could climb trees. So all that makes you physically quite agile and active. And I would also attribute the schools. They had a lot of these inter-school tournaments, like the BSA sports in Bangalore used to be packed with school children. And the encouragement given by all these schools. Most of the other schools also, in other cities also probably did this. But one factor that comes into play is for someone to become a real big champion like if I have to name like Prakash Padukone or Usha Sundarraj, who won 5 national table tennis titles, it's also within the person. They are very driven. Now, Prakash's older brother Pradeep started badminton before Prakash. He was taller and better built than Prakash. And Prakash's younger brothers, Harish and Mahesh, were also good badminton players. But none of them reached that level because Prakash was a very dedicated badminton player and he was very driven. Similarly, the other champions, there is something which is that X factor which you can't put your hand on that drives you to, go and become a champion. And you're so passionate and focused and dedicated, and you'll go all out to, pursue that game and reach that. So those kinds can be in any city. So that's the situation, I guess.
That's all the time we have for questions, but you can take them offline with sir. Just like to thank sir for sharing so much in such short, amount of time. And I think what you were mentioning about the way forward, I think this is a great step. You documenting the sporting legacy of the city in a book and coming and sharing about it is definitely step one for awareness building. So we'd like to thank you, and we have a little something to give you as a token of our gratitude.
That's sorry. Oh, thank you. Thank you. If I may just uh, point out, this, do you all recognize this hockey player? Yes, of course. Any other slides that can be shown? Of course, this name. She's a Kho player. Kho was a game which was very popular in Bangalore also in the 60s and 70s. Even now, because now Kho has become also international. They have the World Kho Championships in India. So Usha was an athlete there. She's with the Karnataka team, and here she is with her trophies. And now she's 76. She still takes part in the veteran athletics. Yeah, very inspiring. This is Malati Holla, who's a para athlete, who's represented, she's a Bangalore woman. She's represented India also in the Olympics. And she runs an NGO for special children. So this is Jayavanti Shivananjappa Shyam, who's India's captain, basketball captain. She's the niece of former Chief Minister S.M. Krishna from Karnataka. She still coaches. This is Nandini Basappa, who's also India's captain, basketball. This is Arun Kumar, whom I mentioned, twice India Junior National Table Tennis Champion and once Asia Junior Champion, now settled in California. He was here last month for the book launch. This is Gunboat Jack, the boxer I told you who turned into a bouncer, then fell on hard days, and then went to America back. This is Gunboat Jack. Yeah, okay.
The swimming scene in Bangalore is fantastic. We are champions now for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
That's thanks to Jagdale primarily and now the Dolphins Club. I'm saying so fantastic swimmers. We're just killing it there.
Absolutely.
So it's not all doom and gloom. So
no, not really. Even other disciplines, there are a few, who are sort of there. But my point is, when, even if, as a child, you are a topper in school and so on, you should keep up the progress. Progress is going forward, isn't it? So, if Karnataka could throw up so many champions at one time and win national titles, what happened somewhere down the line? That has to be examined. That was my point. But I'm not saying that there are no more champions. There are many youngsters who are still taking to sports, and we might see that the old glory days coming back. And let's hope that happens. Thank you, everyone.